All right, it is December 28th, 2022, 10:17 a.m. Technically a few minutes late, but I think everyone started late this morning. I know downstairs we started pretty late also, so I will try to get us back on schedule. What I want to talk with you guys today is actually a really difficult to understand pasuk that leads to some, I think, fascinating insights. If you take a look at Parshas Kisavo, which is in Dvarim, and it is my firstborn son's bar mitzvah parsha.
How nice.
Baruch Hashem. So if you take a look in Kisavo is a really tough parsha, just because it's one of the parshas that has, let's say, chocha, right? Like Hashem telling us all of these terrible things will happen to you in our history, and it's not comfortable to read. Like really bad stuff. I don't even want to say. Just read it if you want to get the details. It's really rough. Here, it reminds me, there's a famous comedian from the 1970s and 80s. His name is George Carlin. Not that kosher. He's got pretty foul language, so I'm not suggesting for you to listen to him. But he was a very smart man, and he had some interesting insights. And one of the things that he mocked a lot was religion, which I appreciate, because I think religion is deserving of mockery sometimes, so that we can actually get to worship of Hashem instead of being stuck in the stupidities. Which Rav Kook, somebody sent me a quote from Rav Kook, who's one of the greatest rabbis of the 20th century, known as the father of religious Zionism. And Rav Kook said that atheism is actually good, because atheism helps us to see what's stupid about religion, because the atheists will tell us, and then we'll be able to grow and become better people because of it. Not that we should be atheists, but they can tell us what is stupid that we do. Well, tzaddik loves criticism, right? Isn't that what the rabbis say? So if a tzaddik loves criticism, then why shouldn't religious people love criticism as well, properly understood?
Does Rav Kook like to cook a lot?
It was spelled with K, not with a C.
Oh.
But nice try. All right. Truth is, I have no idea. I do know that he was a vegetarian during the week, and he only ate meat on Shabbos, because the rabbis say that you should eat meat and drink wine on Shabbos, but he felt that the proper human way was vegetarianism, which just goes to show that I don't have to agree, even with great rabbis. Okay.
My aunt is vegetarian.
I'm sorry. Hashem should help her. So now, everyone knows I'm joking, right? Okay. I only hate vegans. No, I'm joking! Oh my God, I'm joking. Oh, but not really. No, but really. Okay, fine. Okay. So, we are in Parshas Kisavo. If you want to take a look at this for yourself, it's in Perek Chaf Ches 28. And the actual pasuk, the pasuk is one second. I lost it for a second. Did I switch to the wrong page for a second?
Yes. Maybe in 2023 we'll get it right.
It's in Chav Ches, but I think I might have skipped to the wrong page by accident. I thought I had the right page. It's over here. Okay, I'll tell you what it says, and then, because I don't want to waste your time, but you can find it on your own, or I'll find it for you later. So it says one terrible thing after another, right? Like terrible things. And then it says, and this is why. Why do these terrible things happen to you? Well, that's a good question. I'd like to know why exile, murder, and horror, and destruction, and of every type has been visited upon us. And then the pasuk says, right, because Tachas asher lo avadat as Hashem Elokecha b'simcha uvetuv levav. I have it memorized. You're not supposed to say a pasuk memorized, but I can't find it right now, so I just said it. Tachas asher lo avadat as Hashem Elokecha, because you didn't serve Hashem b'simcha, with happiness or joy, however you want to translate that, uvetuv levav, with a good heart. So, I know when I first read the pasuk, I have a great disadvantage in my life, is that I didn't grow up from. So I had to teach myself aleph, beis, and learning everything. It's very challenging. But I also have a great advantage, is that I didn't grow up from. Because now I have all these things that I look at with fresh eyes, and not the eyes of someone who first learned it as a child and has all of the stuff, like I look at it with ignorance, which is lovely. What the people in the East, like Eastern thinkers, call a child's mind. A child's mind is wonderful. No preconceived notions. Like, you can ask your questions without feeling stupid. Oh, I can't ask that, right? And I remember looking at this for the first time when I first saw this and going, that sounds horrible. It sounds so vicious and nasty. It's like Hashem is up there and going, you know why I did all those things for you? Because you weren't happy. What?
Like, because now this is going to make me happy.
Right. It's like, doesn't it sound vindictive? Obviously not. Don't worry. I'm not throwing this away, right? Like, we're going to understand it. But at first glance, it's like, a parent says to a child, I want you to clean up your room. Okay. The kid cleans their room. Why didn't you smile while you cleaned your room? Now I'm going to burn your room to the ground. I'm going to put your toys into the shredder. Then I'm going to melt those toys into a cake and feed it to your puppy. And then watch your puppy drown because you didn't smile while you cleaned your room. Well, that doesn't sound like the best parenting technique. So you're reading the pasuk, and you're like, it doesn't say because you didn't serve Hashem. It says because you didn't serve Him with happiness. That's so harsh, so extreme at first glance. So we have to understand this. This really caught my attention. I was like, what does this mean? And I've heard many answers over the years, some really good ones, some ones that I didn't really connect to, some really good ones that I did. I want to share with you my favorite answer, an answer that really works for me, and I think will be very helpful to understand this idea. First, we have to take a really big step back and ask ourselves, language. What does the word mean? Simcha. What does it mean? We're going to go whiteboard less today, okay? No, it's fine.
Why?
Because I don't want to feel like getting up. No, it's fine. Don't go. We're in the middle. It's fine. It's okay. Do you guys really want a whiteboard? I mean, is that like a necessity?
I can put it right here and you don't have to stand. Why won't we do it on the likes the whiteboard, I see. You don't have
The whiteboard, the preferred teaching tool of the Ku Klux Klan, yes. Never a blackboard.
Blackboard, so racist.
As somebody once said to me, yeah, but if you're using a whiteboard, you're using a black marker. My whole worldview has been destroyed. I am no longer racist. Okay. Oh my God, it's crazy. It's like the mushal never ends. Just remember, a mushal, this is an important lesson to know. A mushal is just a mushal. Because if it were the thing, you wouldn't need the mushal. You would just say the thing, right? So don't take a mushal to be the thing. It's always a tool to understand. The thing. It's not a mushal, it's a davar.
The thing.
A thing. Reminds me of there was a German guy on the radio, and there was a ship that was coming and says, "Help us! We're sinking!" And the guy says, "What are you sinking about?" No success in finding a marker?
I can go down here.
No. Not necessary. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think it was a commercial. What are you thinking about? Okay. My daughter will get a laugh out of that one. She actually saw that with me. It's one of the jokes that we say at home every once in a while. We'll be like, "What are you thinking about?" Okay.
What was that?
I don't like a language course. I think it was an English language course. I think that's what it was.
Why did German come in?
Because you can make fun of Germans. They're Nazis. It's fine. It's like after you kill 6 million Jews, you could just like, well, I guess we can always be made fun of now. That's our lot in life forever. What was the thing? Simcha. What does simcha mean? Happiness.
No.
Joy.
Simcha, I've heard.
Gladness. What have you heard? Tell me.
I've heard it's the feeling of like the feeling when you when you finish accomplishing something spiritual, like when you finish learning the Torah. That's when we call it like Simchas Torah.
That's very good. That's a really, really good answer. You're gonna see that my explanation is right in line with that. I'm gonna say it differently, but it's the same basic concept. I like that a lot. Thank you for sharing that. It's beautiful. Here's the problem with Simcha. There's a few problems with Simcha. One is that we have more than one word in Hebrew for like positive emotional experience that we in English would call happiness. Every time you go to a wedding, Gila, Rina, Ditza, it's like a whole song of nothing but synonyms for happiness, right? It's and which is great, right? Because that teaches us a lot about Torah, by the way. Why do we need so many different words for happiness? Because happiness, there's so many different flavors of happiness. For example, Rina. What does Rina mean?
A name.
I know it's a name. Anyone here named Rina? No one's named Rina. It's my mom's Hebrew name. Her Russian name is Marina, so she went the easy way. I'm Rina now. Sorry, Mom, if you ever listen to this. It's a great name. I love your name. And it does fit you. What does the word Rina mean in Hebrew? No one knows?
First letter.
What?
First letter.
Yes, it means song. But not just any song, because we have a word for song. It's called shir, which, by the way, another girl's name, Shira, right? So the word Rina specifically means a happiness that is so intense that I cannot help but break out in song. That's what the word means.
Okay, happiness.
It's a happiness that's so intense that I cannot help but break out in song. Right? There's a very famous old movie from like the 50s, Singing in the Rain, right? That's what the whole you're like, I'm singing in the rain. Like an idea, like you're just so happy that you can't help but sing, right? Which for some of us makes the people around us unhappy. But we can always take voice lessons or sing on your own, like when you're home alone where nobody knows, because v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha.
Home. 1, 2, or 3.
We don't talk about those movies. So now. So Rina is a very specific type of happiness. There are lots of, like, if you're an Eskimo, you have like 20 words for snow, right? White snow, dark snow, wet snow, black snow, soft snow, yellow snow. Like, there's lots of different types of snow. So you have a different word for like each type of snow. That was one of those jokes that you're not supposed to say out loud. You just let it go, and somebody gets it later. So I've been saying that joke for 30 years. It's fine. And you have, for example, another example would be in Arabic. There's like 10 different words for camels, right? A baby camel, adult camel, a 2-hump camel, 1-hump camel, a dark camel, a light camel, a camel while sleeping, a camel while awake. I'm making some of this stuff up. I have no idea. I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of different words because that's part of your culture. You need to know. And so in Hebrew, there's a lot of different words for prayer. There's a lot of words for meditation, and there's a lot of words for happiness. Those are things that we deal a lot with. So simcha it's not fair to translate simcha as happiness because it's a very specific kind of happiness. Just like Rina is a specific kind of happiness, so is simcha. So can we determine which flavor of happiness is simcha? Yes, we can. There are a lot of sources that discuss it. I'll tell two of my great rabbis that I learned with in Aish Torah, that I had the great pleasure of learning with. I learned this idea from both of them. They both taught the same idea, but from totally different classes and angles. So I heard it from both of them, so I'm like, oh, it's got to be true. Rav Nassim Weiss and Rav Yitzchak Berkowitz, both unbelievable rabbis. Rav Berkowitz is actually now the Rosh Hashiva at Aish Torah for the past year or so. He recently became Rosh Hashiva. So here's the idea. If you go back to the Gemara, and the Rambam brings it down as well, it says that if you're having an experience of nevuah, prophecy, you're talking to Hashem, and He's actually talking back. Not like those people in the soft white rooms with the coats that keep their arms together, right? Not the crazy people, but an actual Navi having a real conversation with Hashem. The Gemara says that you can only be in the middle of nevuah if you're b'simcha. It's a requirement. If you're not b'simcha, can't have nevuah. Which is, by the way, a powerful lesson from this week's parshas, the past few weeks. The rabbi said that Yaakov lost nevuah for 22 years. Because when he thought Yosef was gone, this is such a powerful idea because you're going to see how all this connects. It's crazy how all this connects so in such a cool way. Yaakov lost nevuah. Why? Because he lost simcha. He had no simcha for 22 years.
Ouch.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. So, and you're going to see that when we define simcha carefully, it's going to make perfect sense why Yaakov lost simcha. In terms of this discussion, okay? Good morning. So, now that you know that, here's a story that seems to give us a hard time. You've all heard of Yonah and the fish. I like, if I ever start a matzah company, it's definitely going to be the name of it. It's Yonah Matzah. That's going to be the name. And it's actually funny because one of our neighbors, a very very close friends and neighbors in Beitar, they had the kids. They had an uncle whose name was Yona. So every time on Shabbos, they would sing, Yona Matzah. They would go, Yona, Dod, Yona Matzah. And like the kids would laugh, oh, Dod Yona, Uncle Yona. So every once in a while, till this day, when we sing Yona Matzah by Manayach, right, at home, I'll be like, Yona, Dod Yona Matzah. And my wife would just be like, how many decades will this joke continue? And I'm like, while I live, while I draw breath in this frail, imperfect body, that joke shall never die. And with Hashem's help, my children will continue. In 1,000 years from now, there will be entire communities of Jews that will have a minhag to sing Dod Yona, and they will have no idea where that minhag comes from. And I am convinced that half of our minhagim are exactly the same thing. Because someone 1,000 years ago did something, we're like, there's got to be a reason. Okay. But that's my apicorsis. Don't let that affect you. All right. What was I saying? I always come back to you. Thank you. And it was the same answer last time. Okay. I can't imagine how you guys describe these classes to your parents. Like, so what did you learn today? So we had this nutcase come in that was clearly high on something. All right. Yona. Are you okay? How many? I got in the car with my wife. She's like, so how many girls did you break today? 2 so far. Although that wasn't my fault. That was her fault. Okay. So, in Sefer Yona, at the end, quick review, right? The whole story, you know the story, but I'll review it for you because it's so important to understand the whole context. Yona is told by Hashem that you need to be misnave to the city of Nineveh, that they're going to be destroyed in 3 days. And Yona was like, no, I'm not going to do it because it's going to look bad for the Jews. Right? Because the Jews, 1,000 years, the Nevi'im are telling them to do tshuva, and they don't do tshuva. And I'm going to tell one city of Goyim, and they're going to listen. Yona knew that they would listen. So the Jews would look bad by comparison. I know. So a prophet that shall not be named you broke one person. That's your limit for today. That's your limit. Okay. So the prophet understood that the Jewish people would look bad by comparison, so he runs away, but basically the whole story is in the boat, they throw him off, he's in the fish spits him out to another fish, the rabbis say, because it says dag, then it says daga, and then he gets spit up on dry land. He's like, fine, I'll do the nevuah. He goes to the city of Nineveh, he tells them, and exactly what he thought was going to happen would happen, they listen. Not only did the rabbis explore just how much they listened, he got up and he walked into the city and he's like, in 3 days' time, Hashem will overturn the city. And some random guy passing by goes, what? 3 days' time? Everyone, the Jew told us. And they're all like, ah! And they fast, they put on sackcloth, they put sackcloth on their animals. There's a bunch of animals sitting there going, this is not comfortable. And they're fasting, they make their animals fast. The animals are like, what do we do? And they're like, and they did it. They did. By the way, there's a very interesting story. Why did they know so powerfully to listen to the Navi? Because there's a power that, who is the king of Nineveh, they say? Paro. Paro survived, lived for 1,000 years, and he was just like, I learned my lesson. He totally did tshuva and learned his lesson. I don't know if it's
after Yetziat Mitzrayim?
It's 1,000 years later. This is Yonah. He's one of the latest. I mean, it's a prophet that lived 1,000 years. So you need to learn a little bit of Jewish timeline. Jewish timeline. We're going to put that on our agenda. Jewish timeline. So they did totally do tshuva. Is Yonah happy about this?
No.
He was very upset. He's very upset because he knew that was going to happen. The Jews look bad. He loves the Jews. The Jews look so bad. Beloved Jews, they look so bad. And he's sitting out there. He's hot. It's a heat wave. He's upset. And Hashem is like, all right, he makes a kikayon grow. It's like a tree or it's a giant mushroom, a gourd. Nobody knows for sure. Some vegetable grows up and gives him shade. And Yonah was like, he was like, that's one of the opinions. Yeah. And Yonah's like, thank you for the shade. And then, no, not that kind of mushroom. And then Hashem sends a worm, and the worm eats into the kikayon, and the kikayon dies. And now Yonah's even more upset. He's so upset that Hashem says to him, Yonah, are you upset? I'm paraphrasing. You have to look at the Lashon for yourself for the exact language. And Yonah says, listen to what he says. Yonah says, I'm so upset that death would be preferable for me than life right now. Not only, it's the whole story. The mushroom was like the straw that broke the camel's back. He's like, first I got eaten by a fish, right? Then the goyim put sackcloth on their donkeys. Then my kikayon died. Like, that's it. I'm done. I'm out. Like, he was super upset. He was depressed. He was devastated. He was wished he was dead in comparison to life. Now, what's the problem with the story? What's the problem with our story of Yonah being so unhappy?
He just got saved from the fish.
Because he has to have...
He was talking to Hashem. He's talking to Hashem. And but the Gemara is very clear. You can't have nevuah if you're not besimcha. And we have at least one example in Chumash, Yaakov, who lost nevuah because he lost simcha. So how do we understand? So clearly, simcha is complicated. So here's my premise. Not my premise. Here's what I learned, and this is what I'm explaining. That Yonah, despite his tremendous unhappiness, borderline suicidal depression, right, was actually still besimcha.
How?
I'm going to explain. He also...
Never got nevuah again.
Yonah? I never heard that before.
Oh.
Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Really? Where'd you...
I'm sure it's in there.
This is Chumash. Doesn't have Yonah.
It's not there?
No. I would... Do you know where the... Is there like... I would love to see a source for that. Because that...
I bet you open up an article. You won't have it.
Okay, I'll look it up. That's... To-do list. Look up, did Yonah ever get nevuah again? Okay, I'll look it up. Now... That's interesting. I have to look that up to see because if that's true, that would add to the discussion. In the meantime, he's having a discussion with Hashem right now. So clearly, if the rabbis are right, which we assume they are, we always assume the rabbis are right. Therefore, not me, rabbis, like Chazal from the Gemara. Those are. I'm not even like. What's the expression? I'm not even worthy to sit in the shade of the dung of the donkey of the rabbis. Right? That's the expression. That's how lowly I am. What? I didn't hear what you said. You know how much I love Wednesdays? I just got to tell you. I have such a good time learning with you guys. You guys are the best. All right. Back. Yeah. It's very humble. Okay. The more you know how much the rabbis know, the more you realize... Like ridiculous. What they knew is compared to what I know, it's like not even the same. We're not even the same category of person.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to Simcha and Voldemort. Simcha and Voldemort. The prophet who shall not be named. So now. So this is what both Rabbi Weiss and Rabbi Berkowitz, totally independently of each other, not having discussed the topic beforehand, this is how they both explain the story. The word simcha doesn't mean the type of happiness that we would call happiness of the moment. It has nothing to do with happiness of the moment. In fact, we prove from the story of Yonah that you could be extremely unhappy in that moment, but still be in a state of simcha. We see that from that story. So what does simcha actually mean? So simcha, the way that they explain it, and the way, it's based on a lot of sources where you see the word simcha used in other places, how it comes down. Simcha means, I'm going to use the word happiness because context, right? Happiness that's so intense it makes you sing, happiness of the moment. This is a happiness of life. Life happiness. Overall, I'm happy, I'm alive in general.
But you said he was depressed and suicidal.
So he wasn't actually suicidal. But he was expressing with language just how unhappy he was. You've heard people say that like that. Oh, I wish I was dead. They don't mean it. Hopefully, with the show's out. But people say that all the time. Even the opposite. I'm gonna kill you. Right? I don't mean it. Right? I'm just so mad at you right now. Like we sometimes go over the top in our language. That was what he did. Right? The rabbis say that all the time. Right? So that the person speaks. I forget. There's a language in Aramaic in the Talmud. There's an expression of like they spoke extravagantly. Hyperbole. Hyperbole, right? Hyperbole is like an exaggerated, over-the-top expression to show what you're feeling inside. This was hyperbole, right? He really was happy to be alive. He was just unhappy in the moment because the Jews are embarrassed and the Kikayon, the whole thing. Now, where does happiness of life come from? That's our next question. What is the source? Now, some people are just naturally happy. We're not talking about that. And that's not life happiness. That's just biology. I have more endorphins in my brain. I have more dopamine. I have more serotonin, whatever. Like, I have my neurotransmitters are all good, and I have a pleasant, happy feeling. That doesn't mean you're happy in life. You could drug someone to have lots of positive, happy feelings right now, and they could still be absolutely miserable.
Real going drugs then?
Well, that's actually exactly the point. The drugs don't help you in terms of your life happiness. Now, don't get me wrong. If your doctor prescribes to you antidepressants or some other, which is basically usually most antidepressants are serotonin uptake reinhibitors, right? Which means that when your brain produces serotonin, when that serotonin gets reabsorbed, there are certain class of drugs that will block the reabsorption. So it's not creating more serotonin, it's just keeping it out in your system longer. That's what most antidepressants are. Because sometimes people just have an imbalance in their brain chemistry that a drug might help them to achieve a proper current emotional content. There's nothing wrong with that as long as you're not abusing it, with doctor's approval and all that kind of stuff. But we're not talking about that. Nobody would argue. That's not true. Some people do argue this. Nobody who knows what they're talking about would argue that a proper balance of drugs in your brain, whether natural or made by a pharmacy, is real happiness. I actually did an exercise like this with my rage students a couple of weeks ago. I said, on Shabbos, we broke them up into a whole bunch of little chaburas by the tables, and I said, here's what I want you to discuss. If you could take a pill that now you feel happy for the rest of your life, would you do it or not? And most people actually said no. They talked about it, and they said, because it's not really happy, because you didn't earn it, but like really good. Like people who grew up without Torah, just thinking about a real good question, and they can come up with really interesting answers. So we recognize that. So what brings real life happiness? So I think the key to understanding it is the rest of the pasuk, because it says the simcha, and what does it say at the end? Ubetuv levav, and goodness of heart. The two things go together. Simcha and tuv levav are two sides of the same coin. They're two parts of the same whole, which is what? And I want to come back. Can you repeat what you said simcha was? Because we're going to use your answer as a jumping off point. Yeah.
The feeling you get whenever we accomplish something.
Good.
Like a goal.
Right. And you said specifically spiritual goals. Good. The truth is that it's really any goal, right? Anytime you accomplish something you set out to do, that brings you a type of happiness that is called simcha. It might also bring you a happiness of the moment. Oh, I'm so happy I finished this right now. But it does it at the same time. Simcha is always a goal-related happiness. Now, I'm going to divide between the intellectual appreciation that having a goal gives your life a purpose and a mission. That's what I'm calling simcha. And then when you accomplish that goal, the actual emotion you're feeling, in English I'm going to call that a sense of meaning. And that's the Hebrew. I believe that is a good way of explaining the idea of tuv levav, goodness of heart. Heart is obviously an emotional experience. That's the heart. But simcha, I'm saying, is really the intellectual side of it. It's the two go together. Okay. Now let's put the whole. Yeah, absolutely. I said a lot. Let's put it. Let's sum it up. Simcha, the way I'm explaining it, this is the way my rabbis explain it to me. I didn't come up with this on my own, but I think it makes perfect sense. Simcha is the intellectual appreciation that your life has purpose, and you have the ability to earn and feel meaning because of that purpose. Bless you. Interestingly enough, this is why games are fun. A game is fun because it's a little mini life, a little mini tiny mission in this world. My mission right now, put that ball into that hoop, right? And there are obstacles to overcome. There are steps to accomplish, to achieve that mission. When I take those steps and I achieve that mission, that sense, that burst of satisfactory joy is a little teeny touch of simcha. That's why games are fun. That's why people love playing them. Because games are showing you on a tiny scale what true happiness is. The greater your goal, the greater the possible simcha. That's why most people appreciate, especially 2 o'clock in the morning when they're having an existential crisis, what is life all about? Most people appreciate that just making money for its own sake doesn't bring happiness in life. But if you save the whales, feed the homeless, or house the hungry, I said that in the wrong way. House the homeless, feed the hungry. I used to say that you save the whales, you shave the whales, whatever. Are they hairy? Hairy whales? Why is that ill?
A hairy whale.
What's wrong with that? Keeps them warm. Probably wouldn't go through the water very well though, right? With all that hair getting wet. Probably would sink. Maybe there used to be hairy whales, but they all died out, and so now they became extinct. Evolution. So.
I always wanted to see a hairy whale.
They have woolly mammoths, right? Hairy elephants, but they're not stuck in the water. But they also died out. But that's because people hunted them. So simcha is the intellectual appreciation that life has purpose, or that there is a purpose. And when you take concrete steps, when you do something that you see, you yourself appreciate, hey, I'm getting closer to fulfilling that purpose. I'm doing something real towards that mission, towards that goal, and that feels really good. In English, I'm calling that meaning. That feels meaningful. Just like, even the word makes sense. What I did meant something. See, it's the right word for that context. And that is as a whole, that is the combination of simcha and tuv levav. Now, with that appreciation of what simcha and tuv, so Yonah, he understood life has purpose. He's here for a reason. He's connecting to Hashem. This is all good. He has simcha. But he's unhappy because of the kikayon, the fish, the Jews, all that. Now take a look at Yaakov. What do the rabbis say? Yaakov felt that his life mission had failed. When he felt Yosef was dead, and he didn't have the 12 shvatim that he was supposed to have, he felt his life's mission was a failure. That's why he lost simcha. That's why he lost nevuah. You see how it connects? Isn't that so cool that the ideas connect? Sorry? Well, it's not just having another baby. It's having the shvatim. Another baby wouldn't necessarily be a shavit. Yosef was a shavit. He was Rachel's baby. It was Rachel's baby. Now Rachel's gone. He can't have another baby from Rachel. Maybe that's the answer. Not just any other baby, a Rachel baby. I'm happy you brought up Yaakov and his losing Nevuah, because that fits in here. I still would have to understand why Yonah afterwards would lost Nevuah. That
This was just like a punishment.
I hear. It's possible. Meaning he was worthy of Nevuah, but because you ran away. And it was Mida Kedeged Mida. You ran away from Nevuah, you lose Nevuah. I hear. Now, from a Jewish perspective, of course, the greatest goal of all, connecting to Hashem, it means every moment of the day that you're learning Torah or doing mitzvahs, and you recognize that those things are actually bringing you closer to Hashem, that could bring the greatest sense of meaning and accomplishment and purpose, simcha and tuv levav possible. Now let's come back to the Teichacha. Now, this is the discussion we started with. How could Hashem be so vicious and nasty to destroy the Jews just because they weren't happy? No. It's not because they weren't happy. If you're learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, but you're not besimcha, what that means is quite simple. You don't recognize that this is part of your life's purpose. That means it's meaningless. It's literally meaningless. It's technically meaningless and purposeless. You're doing actions that you do not recognize connect you to your purpose in life and your mission in this world and what Hashem created you for. So of course that requires the most massive wake-up call, because you missed the whole point. You missed the point of Judaism. You could be bringing korbanos to the base of Mikdash, but you don't realize that that's supposed to bring you closer to Hashem. You're learning Torah, you don't realize it's supposed to make you a better person. You're doing mitzvahs, you don't realize that that's supposed to make the whole Jewish people fulfill their mission in life. You're missing the whole point of it all. It's meaningless, technically, literally, meaningless and purposeless life. So who cares the fact that you happen to be putting on tefillin if it's not doing anything for you? Right? What do the rabbis say? Mitzvahs, tzrichos, kavana. Now, what is kavana? The minimum kavana. What is the minimum kavana for a mitzvah? Anybody know? It's in Shulchan Aruch and then Beis Yosef. What is the minimum kavana for a mitzvah to be called a mitzvah? That you know Hashem commanded it. That's the minimum. There's an argument, does Shema require more kavanah than that? That's a machlokas. But every mitzvah other than Shema, everyone agrees that that's enough. If you know...
If you are not specifically thinking at that moment, but you know in general.
That's fine. You have what's called your chazaka of what your kavanah is. Like, okay, I'm not thinking in this one. Obviously, it's best to think about it every time you do a mitzvah, but of course we don't, right? Half the time we remember if we said a bracha 2 seconds ago or not. But as long as you know, when you wake up in the morning, you're like, okay, this is my life, this is what I'm doing, and now you go through the day, you don't always remember. Okay, it's not best, but it's sufficient. It's a stepping stone towards having kavanah all the time. It reminds me, I'll end off this concept with a quick story that happened to me. When I was in yeshiva, there was one of the kollel guys. His wife was running. She was selling cookies in the. He would come in every day with like a box of cookies and a little pushka to put in money. It's yeshiva. You guy take a cookie, put in money. I hope he made his money. I hope nobody stole cookies, right? But I became totally addicted. They were really good. Oh my God, they were so good, and I literally ran out of money. I ran out of money buying cookies. Right? And I called up my uncle. Thank God he was making a good living, computer programmer. And I was like, hey, any chance you could send me some cash, while I'm in yeshiva? And he's like, yeah, I'll send you something. I'm like, he's supporting my cookie habit. And I said to him, the rabbis say that one of the biggest tzedakahs you could do is to support Torah learning in Eretz Yisrael. Right? And my uncle said to me, I'm not doing it because it's a mitzvah. I'm doing it because you're my nephew and I love you. And I was like, no, don't say that. Don't say that. If you don't do it because you know it's a mitzvah, it's not a mitzvah. It's literally not a mitzvah if you don't realize it's a mitzvah, right?
But you realize it, but it doesn't mean that's the motivation.
That's fine. I'm not saying it should be your only motivation. You want to give it to me because you're my uncle and you love me? That's cool. I love you too. But can you also recognize it's a mitzvah from Hashem? Fine, now it's a mitzvah. But if you're like, it's not a mitzvah, I don't care about Hashem, it has nothing to do with it.
Yes, it's a mitzvah, but this time I'm not doing it because...
That's fine. That's not the best. But at least you recognize it's a mitzvah.
So he wasn't saying that...
Listen, what if you say, I know that there's a thing called the Torah that commands this, but I 100% reject the Torah, I reject God, I'm not doing this because it's a commandment, I'm doing it because it's the right thing and I'm just trying to do the right thing. Well, you just lost that on the whole mitzvah. Because you're rejecting the mitzvah. You can do tshuva on your mitzvahs just like you do tshuva on your averos? What is tshuva? Tshuva is, I regret I did something, and if I was doing it again, I would do it differently. That could be positive or negative. If a person at the end of their life, as they're dying, says, this whole Jewish thing was a gigantic waste of time, I wish I never did it, if I could go back, I would reject the whole thing and do it over again, they just lost all their mitzvahs from their entire life.
That's the person.
But it works both ways. Teshuvah is unbelievably powerful. You could literally rewrite your entire life in retrospect. That's the power of teshuvah. If you do it with full kavanah, power, belief, etc. Now, don't get me wrong. I think you can make an argument that a person under the circumstances, they're in a lot of pain, they're dying, they don't really mean it. Like you can be dan lachav schus. They were just, it was an outburst. They didn't really mean it in their heart. Hashem's not going to take away their mitzvahs. You can make that argument. But technically, if they really, really meant it and it was totally in their control and they had total free will, they just erased their entire life of mitzvahs. Just like you could erase your entire life of averos. Okay. Well, that's a nice positive note to end on. Say it again.
What would you say to do tshuva on your mitzvah?
What would you say?
Like,
The same thing you would say to do tshuva on your averos. What are the 4 steps of tshuva? Charata, kabbalah alaba, not do again. All the same things. I regret that I did the mitzvahs. If I did it again, I wouldn't do the mitzvahs.
Something for a positive aspect. Like, could you do it like in a positive aspect?
Yeah, that's just called tshuva. I wish I had never done these averos.
No, but I'm saying for mitzvah.
Yeah, for sure. You could say all those times when I had an opportunity to do a positive mitzvah and I didn't, if I could go back, I would do them. Yeah, absolutely. That's part of tshuva as well. The difference is, the Rambam says, is that that's the only type of tshuva that you don't need Yom Kippur for. To do tshuva on a mitzvah that you missed, your immediate, the tshuva is chal immediately the moment you do it. All other tshuva, it only is complete on Yom Kippur. That's straight up in Hilchos Tshuva in the Rambam. Okay? L'chaim, it's water, don't worry.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you so much for your time and your attention. Mitzvah Shem, see you guys next week. We have class next week, right?